You ever notice how sometimes you're the one doing all the calling, all the checking in, all the fixing, while they just sit back like it's supposed to be that way? You keep trying to keep it alive, and they keep acting like they're doing you a favor just by staying. Let me tell you something. When someone really values you, you won't have to chase them to show up. You won't have to beg for effort. Because love isn't proven by how hard you have to fight to keep it. It's shown in how easy they make it to stay. Today, I'm going to show you the 5 signs you're too much for the wrong people. When you start setting boundaries, you quickly learn who actually respects you and who only respected their access to you. People who truly care about you might not always understand your boundaries at first, but they'll try. They'll ask questions, they'll listen, and they'll adjust because your peace matters to them. But the people who only benefited from your lack of boundaries, the ones who were comfortable taking advantage of your silence or your guilt, will suddenly start acting like you've done something wrong. They'll call you distant, selfish, or different, not because you've changed for the worse, but because you've stopped making their comfort your priority. Setting boundaries doesn't push good people away. It reveals who was only around for what you allowed. Think about it. The moment you say, no, not out of anger, but out of self-respect, someone who truly values you will respect that. They might even admire it. But someone who was only invested in the version of you that said yes to everything, they'll see your growth as a threat. It's not that they don't hear your boundary. It's that your boundary interrupts their control. When you begin to value your peace over pleasing others, something powerful happens. You start noticing patterns that used to blend into the background. The friend who only calls when they need a favor. The coworker who dumps their stress on you because they know you'll listen. The partner who guilt trips you when you ask for space. Those patterns become impossible to ignore. What used to feel like connection starts to feel like obligation. And you begin to realize that love without respect isn't love, it's dependency disguised as closeness. Boundaries are not walls. They're doors with locks, locks that only open for people who knock with respect. But people who have been walking into your emotional space uninvited for years aren't going to suddenly finding a lock there. They'll rattle the handle, they'll knock louder, and when that doesn't work, they'll accuse you of changing. And they're right. You did change. You grew. You decided that being kind doesn't mean being a doormat. You decided that peace isn't selfish, it's necessary. Defensiveness is often a confession. When someone gets angry because you set a boundary, what they're really saying is, I benefited from your lack of one. It's their way of trying to turn your growth into guilt. They want to make you feel bad for doing what's healthy. Because if they can make you feel bad, they can keep you small. And small you is easy to manage, easy to manipulate, easy to keep around. But the moment you realize your worth and start enforcing it, they lose the leverage they never should have had in the first place. You can tell a lot about someone by how they respond to your no. Some people will step back and say, I get it. Let me know what you need. Others will double down, trying to convince you that you're overreacting, that you're being dramatic, or that you're too sensitive. That's not love. That's control dressed up as concern. The people who genuinely care about you will adapt. The ones who only care about themselves will attack. And that attack won't always be loud. It might come through sarcasm, silent treatment, or subtle guilt. But make no mistake, it's still an attack on your autonomy. There's this lie we grow up believing, that setting boundaries will make us lose people. The truth is, boundaries don't make you lose anyone who was meant to stay. They just filter out the ones who were never comfortable with your strength. You don't lose real friends when you start saying no. You lose manipulators. You lose takers. You lose people who preferred your confusion over your clarity. That's not loss. That's alignment. When someone gets defensive about your boundary, they're showing you that the relationship wasn't built on mutual respect. It was built on access. And access is not love. Access means they enjoyed the benefits of being close to you without the accountability of treating you right. So when you finally draw a line, their defensiveness isn't about your boundary, it's about their fear of losing control. They're scared of losing the version of you that never asked for more, the version that tolerated their inconsistency, the version that put their needs first every single time. What makes this hard is that boundaries often trigger guilt in good people. You start wondering, am I being too harsh? Am I being cold? But that guilt isn't a sign that you're wrong. It's a sign that you're healing from being taught that your worth depends on keeping everyone happy. People who get defensive when you set boundaries will try to use that guilt to pull you back. They'll twist your kindness into weakness, hoping you'll break the boundary just to make things smooth again. But if you keep doing that, you teach them that your comfort is negotiable. And once people learn that, they'll keep negotiating your peace until there's nothing left. Boundaries are how you teach people to treat you. Every time you enforce one, you send a message, not just to them, but to yourself. You remind yourself that your energy, your time, and your emotional space have value. And people who get defensive about that value are simply confirming that they never saw it in the first place. It's not your job to convince them. It's your job to protect it. When you start setting boundaries, you'll notice that your circle gets smaller, but your peace gets stronger. The invitations might stop coming. The phone might get quieter. But silence isn't rejection, it's space. Space for the right people to find you. Space for your energy to reset. Space for you to finally breathe without feeling like you owe everyone an explanation. And when the right people show up, they won't make you choose between being kind and being respected. They'll understand that both can exist at the same time. The hardest part of growth is realizing that the people who were loudest in your life might not have been the most loyal. But defensiveness reveals truth. When you see someone react to your boundary with anger, manipulation, or passive aggression, you're seeing who they are when they can't use you. And that's valuable information, because you can't build a healthy connection with someone who sees your limits as a personal attack. You can't keep sacrificing your mental and emotional health to keep people comfortable. The ones who get defensive when you set boundaries are showing you that they were never invested in you. They were invested in your compliance. They liked the version of you that was easy to access, easy to persuade, easy to drain. But that version of you was surviving, not living. And the moment you decide to live, to take up space, to say no, to protect your peace, they'll call you too much. You're not too much. You're just finally enough for yourself. And people who aren't used to that will always get defensive, not because you've become harder to love, but because they were never capable of loving you without conditions. Boundaries don't make you cold. They make you clear. And clarity is something that insecure, controlling, or self-centered people can't handle. So when someone reacts with defensiveness to your boundary, don't see it as conflict. See it as clarity. See it as the truth finally showing itself. Because once you see that, you stop trying to change their reaction and start respecting your own peace. They downplay your growth because it reminds them of their stagnation. When you start improving your life mentally, emotionally, spiritually, people who are stuck will feel it. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because your progress becomes a mirror for what they refuse to face in themselves. Growth has a way of exposing comfort. The moment you begin setting goals, changing habits, or healing wounds, You unintentionally challenge the people who've chosen to stay the same. And instead of being inspired, many will get defensive or dismissive. They'll say things like, "You've changed," as if it's an insult. They'll make jokes about your new routines, your focus, or your mindset. "Oh, you're too good for us now." Or, "You think you're better than everyone." They'll turn your progress into a punchline to make themselves feel more comfortable with their lack of it. Because deep down, your growth reminds them that they've had the same opportunities, the same time, the same chances, but they didn't take them. So instead of leveling up, they try to level you down. You'll notice this most from the people who once felt closest to you. Friends who used to celebrate with you start giving half-hearted congratulations. They stop showing genuine excitement when you share good news. You can feel it in their tone, that subtle tension, that little pause before they respond. It's not jealousy, it's discomfort. They're not mad that you've grown. They're uncomfortable that they haven't. And instead of admitting that to themselves, it's easier for them to minimize your progress. They can't celebrate your elevation because it exposes their stagnation. Growth requires reflection, and reflection can be painful. When you start making progress, setting boundaries, improving your health, focusing on your purpose, it highlights the choices others have avoided. People who aren't ready to face their own habits will often criticize yours. They'll say you're acting different because you don't want to gossip anymore. They'll say you're not fun anymore because you've stopped tolerating toxic behavior. They'll say you're too serious because you've decided that your peace matters more than fitting in. But what they really mean is, "You're changing faster than I can handle." When people can't match your energy, they'll try to lower it. They'll find ways to make you question yourself, to make you feel guilty for growing. "You're so busy now." They'll say, as if that's a flaw. Or they'll bring up the old version of you, the one who tolerated nonsense, the one who stayed quiet to keep the peace. They'll try to resurrect that version because that's the one they could control. Growth disrupts dynamics. It forces people to either rise with you or fall behind. And some would rather stay bitter than get better. You'll start noticing how they react when you talk about your dreams. Some people will encourage you, push you, challenge you in the best way. But others will subtly discourage you. They'll remind you of your failures. They'll bring up all the reasons it won't work, not because they want to protect you, but because your ambition threatens their excuses. Your courage makes their comfort zone feel smaller. Your progress exposes their procrastination. And instead of using your example as motivation, they choose to tear it down so they can stay where they are without feeling guilty. It's hard because we often expect that the people who love us will automatically support our growth. But love doesn't always mean maturity. Some people love you as long as you stay within the version of yourself they're comfortable with. Once you outgrow that version, they feel left behind. And instead of growing with you, they try to pull you back. They might do it subtly through sarcasm or passive comments. Or they might do it openly, questioning your decisions and calling your growth fake. Either way, it's the same message. They want you to stay where they last recognized you. You can't let that stop you. You can't shrink to make others feel comfortable with their stagnation. Because the truth is, your growth isn't an attack on anyone. It's an invitation. But not everyone's ready to accept it. Some people are addicted to the comfort of complaining. They'd rather talk about what's wrong than do the work to fix it. And when you start doing that work, when you start changing the way you think, talk, and show up, it breaks the unspoken agreement you had with them to stay small together. Once you leave that space, they either have to grow too, or they'll start resenting you for leaving. You'll see this play out in conversations. You'll share something you're proud of, and they'll find a way to downplay it. Oh, that's nice, but anyone can do that. Or they'll compare it to their own situation to shift the focus away from your progress. They might even act like they don't care at all. But indifference is often a cover for insecurity. People who feel content in their own lives don't need to minimize someone else's progress. The only people who downplay growth are the ones who feel threatened by it. It's not about arrogance. You're not too good for anyone. You're just not willing to live at the same emotional or mental level anymore. Growth changes your standards, how you communicate, how you spend your time, what you tolerate. And when your standards rise, people who refuse to evolve will either step up or fall off. Let them. Because forcing someone to see your growth when they're determined to deny it is like explaining color to someone who's chosen to keep their eyes closed. The people who can't celebrate your progress are showing you where their own insecurities live. And it's not your job to fix that. You can't dim your light to protect someone else's shadow. You can care for them, you can wish them well, but you don't owe them your stagnation. You don't owe anyone the smaller version of you just because they were comfortable with it. You can't heal and hold yourself back at the same time. Sometimes the hardest part of growing is realizing that not everyone who started with you will finish with you. The people who downplay your growth are often the same ones who needed your validation the most, because as long as you were stuck to, they didn't have to face their own lack of progress. The moment you start breaking that pattern, they lose the comfort of comparison. Suddenly, your journey becomes proof that change is possible, and that's a hard truth to face when you've spent years avoiding it. You'll find peace when you stop needing their approval. You don't need everyone to understand your growth. You just need to keep moving. Growth isn't about being better than anyone. It's about being better than who you were. And the right people will see that. They'll clap for you when you win, even if they're still waiting for their turn. They'll celebrate your effort, not compete with it, because they understand that someone else's light doesn't dim theirs. It just makes the room brighter. The ones who downplay your growth are revealing their fear of being left behind. But you can't slow your pace to prove your loyalty. You can love people without limiting yourself. You can wish them well from a distance. You can outgrow environments without bitterness. Growth doesn't mean you think less of them. It just means you've learned to think more of yourself. And that's something small-minded people will always try to downplay, because deep down, they know they could have done the same. You feel drained after every interaction instead of supported. That's one of the clearest signs that you've outgrown someone, even if your heart doesn't want to admit it. When a relationship starts costing more energy than it gives, when every conversation leaves you feeling smaller instead of stronger, you're not in a connection anymore. You're in a transaction. It's like emotional gravity pulling you down every time you try to rise. You walk away from time spent together feeling empty, overthinking what you said, wondering if you were too much or not enough, replaying moments in your head instead of feeling seen or safe. That kind of exhaustion doesn't come from healthy people. It comes from relationships that stopped being mutual a long time ago. It often starts subtly. You notice that when you share good news, they either ignore it or twist it into a competition. You notice that when you're vulnerable, they change the subject or make it about themselves. You go to them hoping for understanding, and you leave feeling unheard. It's not dramatic or obvious at first. It's quiet, like a slow leak in your energy. But over time, it adds up. You start dreading their calls. You start pretending to be fine around them because being real takes too much effort. You stop feeling like yourself in their presence. That's not connection, that's depletion. Supportive people refill your energy. They listen, they care, they hold space for you without judgment. You can be honest with them without feeling like you're walking on eggshells. But when you're too grown for someone, too emotionally mature, too self-aware, too healed, the relationship dynamic shifts. Suddenly, you're the one doing all the listening. You're the one calming them down, encouraging them, helping them process things. But when it's your turn, they vanish. It's like you're pouring from a cup they never refill. And no matter how much you give, it's never enough to make them satisfied. The emotional drain comes from imbalance. You're trying to build, they're trying to vent. You're trying to move forward, they're trying to stay comfortable. You're trying to communicate clearly, they're trying to win arguments. It's exhausting trying to meet someone halfway when they refuse to take even a single step. You start carrying the emotional weight of both people. You manage the conflict, soothe their ego, adjust your tone, watch your words, all while ignoring your own exhaustion just to keep the peace. And the cruel part is, they rarely notice how hard you're trying. They just keep taking because that's what they've always done. You can tell you're outgrowing someone when silence feels better than conversation, when you'd rather be alone than have to filter yourself around them, when you start feeling like you need recovery time after spending time together. Healthy relationships don't leave you drained. They leave you balanced. They might not always be easy, but they should feel honest, safe, and mutual. The exhaustion you feel is your body's way of signaling that something is off. It's the emotional version of a low battery warning. If you keep ignoring it, you'll burn out. When people don't match your level of emotional awareness, they unconsciously start feeding off your stability. You become their comfort zone, their therapist, their problem solver, and for a while, you might think that's what being a good person means. You convince yourself that helping them is love, that staying patient is loyalty. But love without boundaries becomes self-destruction. Because the truth is, if someone keeps taking and never gives, they're not connecting, they're consuming. And you can't keep letting people feed off your energy just because you care about them. You'll notice the drain most in moments when you need support the most. You'll open up about your struggles, and instead of empathy, you'll get judgment. You'll express your feelings, and they'll twist it into an attack. You'll ask for understanding, and they'll accuse you of being sensitive. And after a while, you stop opening up altogether. You learn to self-soothe because you've realized that seeking comfort from them just makes things worse. That's not connection, that's survival. And no one deserves to constantly feel like they have to shrink their needs just to be tolerated. When someone truly supports you, you feel lighter after being around them. You feel understood, seen, accepted. Even when they disagree with you, you still feel safe. But when someone resents your growth, every interaction turns into a subtle competition or a power play. They interrupt you, dismiss you, or make you feel guilty for wanting peace. You start feeling like you have to justify every boundary, every choice, every emotion. It's not always loud disrespect, it's quiet invalidation disguised as just being honest. But that kind of honesty is poison. It drains you because it's not truth. It's control. You can't thrive in environments that constantly question your worth. You can't grow around people who make you feel wrong for evolving. The longer you stay connected to someone who drains you, the more you start confusing exhaustion with love. You start thinking that maybe this is just what relationships are supposed to feel like. Heavy, complicated, one-sided. But that's not love. That's conditioning. Real love doesn't leave you tired. It leaves you grounded. You might tell yourself that things will change, that if you keep giving, they'll eventually start giving back. But people who drain you aren't waiting to understand you. They're waiting for you to give up and go back to being easy to use. You can't heal in a space that keeps reopening your wounds. You can't find peace in relationships that only take from you. The moment you start growing, those relationships will test you. They'll test whether you love yourself enough to stop explaining why you're tired and start doing something about it. Sometimes the reason you feel so exhausted isn't because you're doing too much. It's because you're doing everything for the wrong people. You're carrying emotional loads that aren't yours to carry. You're fighting to be understood by people who only listen to respond. You're trying to pour love into cups with holes in them. That's why no matter how much effort you give, it never feels like enough. The problem isn't your capacity to love. It's that you're trying to fill spaces that refuse to hold you. Energy doesn't lie. When you leave a conversation feeling small, anxious, or emotionally sore, pay attention. That's your intuition telling you that you've been giving too much in a place that gives too little. The right people won't drain you. They'll recharge you. They'll listen without making it about themselves. They'll support you without needing to compete. They'll show up for you the way you show up for them. That's what reciprocity feels like. And when you finally experience that, you'll wonder why you ever settled for less. Draining relationships teach you a powerful lesson. Not everyone deserves access to your energy. You can care about someone and still decide that their presence costs too much. You can love someone and still walk away when peace becomes too expensive. Growth doesn't always mean fixing things. It sometimes means recognizing that you can't heal in the same place that made you sick. If you constantly feel drained after interacting with someone, that's not just fatigue. That's evidence. Evidence that your spirit has outgrown the space you're in. Evidence that you've become too conscious, too self-aware, too grounded to keep existing in dynamics that take more than they give. Evidence that it's time to stop over-explaining and start protecting your peace. You're the only one putting effort into maintaining the connection. That's one of the most painful truths to accept because it forces you to see the imbalance you've been avoiding. You start realizing that if you stop texting first, the conversation would die. If you stop checking in, they'd disappear. If you stopped apologizing just to smooth things over, the silence would stretch forever. It's a strange kind of loneliness, being in something that only survives because you're the one keeping it alive. You keep showing up, hoping your consistency will inspire theirs, but all it does is exhaust you. Because effort that isn't mutual isn't connection, it's chasing. When you're the only one holding things together, you start carrying both your emotions and theirs. You justify their distance, make excuses for their silence, convince yourself they're just busy, when deep down, you know they're not. You remember every moment they showed you they cared and cling to those memories as proof that they still do, even when their actions keep proving otherwise. That's how attachment works. It makes you loyal to potential instead of reality. You keep hoping for the version of them who used to try, the one who used to show up, but that version doesn't exist anymore. And the longer you wait for it to come back, the smaller you feel. Effort isn't just about doing grand gestures. It's about consistency. It's about being emotionally available, about communicating, about showing that you care through action, not words. But when you're too mature for someone, too emotionally aware, you start noticing how they only match your energy when it's convenient. They reach out when they need something. They say the right things when they feel you pulling away. But when you need reassurance, they go silent. When you're hurting, they minimize it. When you want depth, they give you surface. And slowly, you begin to realize that what you have isn't a relationship. It's maintenance. You're maintaining something that they already gave up on. There's a certain kind of fatigue that comes from being the one who always tries. You can't even rest without feeling guilty because part of you believes that if you stop trying, everything will fall apart, and maybe it will. But that's not love. That's dependency. Real love doesn't demand that you carry it alone. Real connection doesn't crumble the moment you take a breath. If someone really values you, you won't have to beg them to stay involved. You won't have to earn their effort every day like it's some test you might fail. Because genuine people don't let the relationship go cold while you're trying to keep it warm. You can tell you're the only one trying when the conversations start feeling one-sided. You ask the questions, you remember the details, you check in, you initiate plans, and they just respond. They don't engage, they don't initiate, they don't invest. It's like trying to keep a fire going when you're the only one adding wood. You start feeling resentful, but you don't say anything because you're scared that if you stop, they'll leave. But here's the truth. They already have. Maybe not physically, but emotionally. They checked out a while ago, and you've been keeping the illusion alive ever since. It's not that they don't know what you need. It's that they don't care enough to give it. And that's a hard pill to swallow because it means accepting that effort can't be forced. You can't inspire someone to value you by overextending yourself. You can't keep proving your worth to someone who's already made up their mind to take you for granted. Sometimes people get comfortable with your consistency. They assume you'll always be there, no matter how little they give. So they stop trying. They stop showing up. They stop caring. And every time you forgive it, you teach them that they can. You'll start to feel the weight of that imbalance in your spirit. You'll feel it in the way you start dreading the next conversation, in the way your messages get shorter, in the way your enthusiasm fades. You'll start questioning yourself, wondering if you're asking for too much when all you've ever wanted was reciprocity. But you're not asking for too much. You're just asking the wrong person. You can't expect effort from someone whose content letting you do all the work. You can't build something real with someone who's comfortable watching you struggle to keep it standing. What's worse is how the lack of effort starts to erode your self-worth. You start wondering why you're not enough to make them try. You start internalizing their indifference as your inadequacy. But their lack of effort has nothing to do with your value. It's a reflection of theirs. People who know how to love give effort naturally. People who care show it. You should never have to convince someone to meet you halfway. If they wanted to, they would. And if they don't, your begging won't make them. All it does is drain you and teach them that your boundaries are flexible. It takes strength to stop trying, because stopping feels like giving up, but really it's acceptance. Acceptance that you can't make someone love you the way you love them. Acceptance that connection requires two people who choose each other every day, not one person doing the emotional labor for both. Acceptance that effort should be mutual, not manipulated. The moment you stop trying to save something that isn't being nurtured from the other side, you start saving yourself. The hardest part is realizing that peace sometimes comes with distance. You'll miss them, of course. You'll want to reach out to fix things, to go back to how it used to be. But remind yourself, how it used to be is exactly what drained you. You've already been the one carrying the relationship, and all it gave you was exhaustion. Peace might feel empty at first, but that emptiness is just space, space for your energy to return, space for mutual connections to grow, space for people who will match your effort without being asked. You shouldn't have to beg to be prioritized. You shouldn't have to chase clarity or prove your worth. Relationships should feel like teamwork, not a solo project. If you're the only one putting effort in, You're not being loved. You're being used. And one day, you'll look back and realize that the moment you stopped chasing, you didn't lose them. You found yourself. Because effort should never be one-sided. The right people will meet you where you are, not wait for you to carry the entire weight of the connection.